Hey, everybody, it's your friend James Shaw. Thanks so much for being with us. And we're doing what we do. We talk to elite people who are doing elite things, and we have the elite of the elite today. Phil Jones with us. You've become an icon inside of the Keller Williams community anyway. You've spoken at events. You're coming to an event I'm hosting, yet it's your first time inside of our group. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm so honored to have you. For the 6 people who are part of our community that don't know who you are, would you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then we'll get started.
Sure, I'll keep this real brief. My name is Phil Jones. I'm the author of Exactly What to Say, plus 8 other business books, plus 1 cute little children's book. And I spend the bulk of my time helping people who need to sell stuff that don't see themselves necessarily as salespeople to find the right words at the right time to be able to deliver more of the right kind of results. So that's me in a skinny. And I speak all around the world, spoken in 59 countries, 5 different continents, reached about, 3,500 professional audiences, a couple of million people.
I love it. And you're coming to an event that we're hosting in April called Elevate. It's an in-person event that we do as part of this Pivot Shift Ahead community. We have a handful of tickets left. It actually always, Phil, it sells out a year in advance every time. But you know how people's stuff works, stuff comes up. And so we've got a handful of people looking to transfer tickets. So if you want one, we have them available, elevatend.com, and you're going to be one of our speakers, and I'll walk through what else to expect there. But here's what I want to jump into. As I've been a real estate professional for almost 20 years, been with Keller Williams that whole time, and I've coached with MAPS and used to coach Bold, and we always would learn about the importance of really preparing on what to say, and yet so many people seem to fight that. And I don't know, is it because we want to sound authentic and not scripted, or we just want to kind of go out, or we're overconfident? Why do you think there's a hesitation to just prepare and practice when it comes to this sort of thing?
I think there are a lot of reasons, James, when we plug into this. One is it's a lot easier not to, right? If what we can do is not be prepared, then we didn't have a plan. Therefore, we didn't fail at the plan that we didn't have. So there's actually a self-confidence factor here that says it's easier in my life if I fail to plan. I also think that there's a perception that is preparing for conversations is ignorant towards the person that you're showing up to. However, some basic science will teach you is that you cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. I repeat, you cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. Yet so many of us find ourselves stepping into situations where we are writing what it is we're going to say whilst we're saying it, whilst we're thinking about the thing we just said, and then wonder why we lack confidence in that given moment. What professionals would choose to do by alternative is they would choose to be ready for the known moments. And in a real estate scenario, like, how many unknown moments truly are there? The answer is not that many. So if you prepare for the known moments, then you can actually be more prepared for the unknown moments because you can live in that moment. You can actually be fully present because you're not thinking, what do I need to say? What am I going to reach for at this given point in time? I believe the challenge that happens, though, from a scripting point of view, is people's immediate resistance is nothing's going to go word perfect in that script because the other person doesn't know their lines. And that's where we create resistance. It's like the math doesn't add up in somebody's head. So they go, I can't do that. But like every great chef, a chef has a pantry of ingredients. They have what's available and fresh at that period of time. And then they have the repertoire of their experience. And the result of which is they can also always craft a meaningful dish for a meaningful moment. That should be the same for every professional in real estate. Walking into a known moment, are you ready to be able to create the right dish? Control the controllables heading in. And then that way you're going to be able to have more confidence in the moment because you weren't worrying about exactly what to say.
Well, the 2 things I love out of that I think are great. One, you said you can't write, perform, and edit at the same time. That's legit genius. And I think many of us think we can. So I absolutely love it. We do hear the same handful of things over and over again. So kind of, and by the way, we already have whatever it is that we're saying. The question is it effective or not in the moment? And then the third piece of that is, when you have this library of questions or objection handlers or whatever, you gave us a key piece. We can be present with that person who we're talking to. What I get from that is it's actually more respectful to be prepared than it is to be unprepared. When you have practiced and know what your common objection handlers are, or common questions you want to ask, or statements you want to make, when you practice that, we can pay attention to the person we're talking to, right?
So much so. And I take my viewpoint as a professional speaker, right? People say to me things like, do you not get nervous when you're up on stage in front of 3,000 people for an hour? I'm like, I don't get nervous. I get responsible because it's not about my hour. It's about their 3,000 hours of productivity. Isn't the same true as a real estate agent? You're stepping into a listing presentation. How hard did you work to be able to get that lead, that opportunity, that appointment, that moment to be able to show up? How hard did you work to be able to find a meaningful conversation with a buyer, get to a buyer consultation, being in a situation where you're in a showing with somebody? We work so hard to create that opportunity. We then show up to that opportunity like it's a 5-minute conversation. It isn't. It's a 5-minute conversation that has a compounding effect that could go on to result in a lifetime's worth of business and transactions with that individual. And every conversation you're having, you're either helping or hurting that outcome. These are $1 million conversations quite often, but we're treating them like they were worth 45 bucks.
That is some great perspective. So do you think it comes from a sense of overconfidence and ability? Does it again come from, if I practice, I'm not authentic? Like, ultimately, where does the
laziness,
hesitation?
James? It
What's
comes
that?
from laziness.
Well, tell me more about that.
It comes from is,
tell me more.
Like, talent will get you in the game and hard work will get you on the game, but professionalism gets you on the podium. And very few people are prepared to take the step between being a highly competent amateur and being a pro, because that final 10% is more work than the other 90 all stacked up on top of each other. And if we behave lazily, it's easy to be able to celebrate things like, oh, I can wing it, I've got the gift of the gab, I know what I'm doing, I'm comfortable, etc. Confidence actually comes from being in a situation a significant number of times in the past and being highly certain of the way that this is going to play out. If confidence is coming from any place other than that, what you're actually demonstrating is arrogance or ignorance, not confidence.
I love that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I think the reason this is so hard is because it's hard, and that's a good thing. When we think about the real estate industry right now, is 90% of the industry is getting hyper-focused about automations and AI on, like, what's the new version of the easy button that's going to get me rich quick? What most are forgetting is that we're entering into a skills-based economy where the consumer has more access to information than they've ever had in the past. Decision-making is more convoluted and clouded than it's ever been in the past. And the real thing that we should be looking to master is to help people in moments of indecision. There's no content that's going to help with that. There is no marketing automation that's going to help with that. There's no artificial intelligence that's going to work with that. We're looking at emotional intelligence and skills to be able to read and serve a moment. That's a very different playbook.
Yeah.
It's highly difficult to be able to master because you cannot master it. You can only practice it. And you can practice it for someone like ever and never reach a level of perfection. That's the point. And this is why the pros in the world of sport are still out there looking to be able to perfect the basics. That's why Steph Curry, as good as he is at being able to take 3-pointers, is still practicing every single day. That's why the world's best golfers are still working on being able to get better at their swing. They don't be like, oh, I've taken a golf shot from 100 yards before. I've got that. I don't need to keep getting better at it. Pros in the world of sport are continually refining. Wouldn't it make sense that pros in the world of real estate are continually refining? And the skill that we need to master most is to be consistently and relentlessly on the quest for better at how we show up to the conversations where we interact with the people we're looking to influence.
No doubt. No one wants to be called lazy. So, but if the difference is between this 90% of our natural, just whatever is packed inside of me, and I've got this and I've done this forever, versus the 10% of the really practice and refine is what makes you elite, then walk me through, how do we refine and get better and grow, even for someone who's like, but Phil, I've done this forever. I'm a successful agent. Look, I did 62 homes last year. Like, I know what I'm doing. You're saying that could be laziness. So how do we move from laziness to being a little bit more purposeful? What are some tips?
I'm using the word lazy on purpose with the intention.
Get your attention. It's offensive.
Right.
Right.
I'll counter that a touch by sharing that I believe that the greatest cost to most of your businesses in the coming years is your experience. Your experience means that you can walk into many a set of circumstances or scenario less than perfectly prepared. And the result of that less than perfect preparation rarely hurts you. because you can dig yourself out of things, because you have the experience to be able to navigate some of the complexities that show up. And also, you start to enjoy making things a little more difficult for yourself just to keep life interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a cost to that experience. If you're looking to step into not being lazy, not relying upon your experience, it's understanding that last year's results are only last year's results. Yesterday's results are only yesterday's results. Getting ready for tomorrow means that your competition is getting better for tomorrow too. Means that if you're not getting better, you're just staying the same, you're actually getting worse.
There's no forward, there's no backward, right? I mean, just real quick, I'm sorry, there's no stationary, there's only forward or backward. So we're moving closer to getting better and evolving, or are we going back? And if we settle, hey, you know what, my listing presentation, I just go in and feel the vibe from them and wing it, and I get it every time, except for the times you don't.
Right. Yeah. And I hear people talk about their conversion rates, and they're like, yeah, I got a 92% conversion rate. And then you dig into it, and it's really a 21% conversion rate. It's like a 92% conversion rates on the ones they're deciding to keep score on, because all the other ones they decided they weren't going to count. And I believe that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it. I think that's the starting point of all of this work. And the realization about a change in a market means that those conversations that you know you're stepping into are always changing. Like a buyer today has different fears and reservations and challenges than they had 6 months ago.
Yes.
A seller today has different fears and reservations than they had maybe 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And your lack of awareness as to what those could be would mean that you show up with your copy and paste, press play, I'm awesome, let you tell you how awesome I am presentation. And we may end up missing the mark, or not necessarily missing the mark, finding ourselves with objections, then spending 20, 30, 50 minutes in navigating those objections, still coming out with the result that we hoped for. It was just a lot harder on both parties. Therefore, it was more exhausting. Therefore, it cost you time. It cost you energy. And it maybe cost you making 3 more meaningful phone calls. It cost you doing 2 more meaningful steps of productivity. Or it prevented the flavor of the conversation, allowing you to be able to set expectation to massively over-deliver for the client. You might have won the listing, but you won it having to make promises that were beyond what you would like to make. All because we weren't as prepared as we could have been.
Mm. So we're talking about daily practice. And I think you and I will agree on this, and is that we're always practicing. The question is, who's our practice partner?
That's right.
Is our practice partner another real estate professional or mentor or accountability partner or coach who can help us walk through things, and we can actually probably sound pretty bad and really refine? Or is our practice partner a potential client who could be paying us tens of thousands of dollars? And one of those groups of training is more expensive than the other, right? Every time you practice on a potential client, that's way more expensive than a coach or an accountability partner or somebody in your office. Would you walk us through kind of what a good practice routine looks like? Because you mentioned, a golfer, a basketball player, they have a routine. Seth Curry has a routine. Right. And he goes on a game day, he has a routine. On a practice day, he has a routine. And that's why he's one of the best shooters in the history of basketball. So walk through, what might a good routine for one of us look like?
Well, I think just like any sports player, you have different drills for different scenarios to be able to refine new skills. I believe a practice that should be essential for every real estate agent is to think about your known enemy, your known objection. What is something you're hyper aware that somebody is almost certainly going to have in their mind that could affect their decision making? So what might an example of that be today, James? I can think of many of examples.
I mean, what are you hearing? Right? Interest rates are going to be one. Right. Where am I going to move if I'm a seller is going to be another. I mean, those are probably that's the biggest probably buyer and seller objection, I think, right now.
Okay. So if I'm concerned about interest rates, and I know that my buyer or seller is concerned about interest rates and the effect that that's going to have on their decision making, I would be running role play jam sessions about, well, what would need to be true for somebody to have more confidence in buying today, despite the fact that interest rates are higher than they were a couple of years ago? Why would somebody pull the trigger on a decision in February, March, April, May of 2024 and not wait for the rates to drop, which is what lots of people are thinking to be able to do? Why would somebody be able to do that? Now, they would do that if they thought they would get a better price on the home. They would do that if they thought that the competition on that home would be less. They'd do that if they had more certainty about their income projections at this point and it gave them more buying power through what their lender would provide for them. They'd do that if they had confidence and certainty that they were going to be staying in the area for a significant period of time. They'd do that if their current circumstances were costing them, either through time pressures like a lease coming to an end or a reduced rate period coming to an end, or just the reality of where they would need to commute from there, or their housing circumstances are just under too much pressure at that moment in time. There are lots of reasons why somebody would pay more for something today than they could pay for it tomorrow or in 6 months' time if those circumstances were right. So that's where my jam session would start, is what needs to be true for it to be true for somebody to do what I'd like them to do today. Having collected all those truths, I would then start to role play. What questions could I ask to help me collect that evidence? Questions like, how long have you been living in your existing home? And they say, well, like whatever they say back. And you say, well, so what's prompting the change for you to maybe look to do something different? And now what am I doing? I'm collecting evidence as to why they definitely want to move without asking them why they were thinking of moving.
Right.
What else am I then shaping and working questions is, how long have you been looking? In that time period, how many homes have you seen that you thought you might have wanted to potentially have made a move on that you missed out on? How long do you see yourself living in the neighborhood? In terms of your career right now, do you see yourself being stable? Do you see your income going up, or are you on some kind of timeline as to when you might be looking to retire? They'll be like, no, we're stable. We're going to be earning what we're earning, maybe a little more in the years to come. What do you understand about what might happen if you wait till later in the year and interest rates were to maybe drop a little? What do you imagine might happen if you were to play the waiting game? They say, I don't know. Right. You say, well, would it help if I shared with you what we are learning on the inside on what's happened historically?
The answer to that is yes, it would help.
Yeah. How would you feel if you were to wait for the interest rates to drop and that you're now paying $50,000, $100,000 more for the house?
Yes.
How important is it to you that you actually own your own home at some point? What do you mean by that? I mean that you get to a point that you've unencumbered the mortgage.
I should have kept score on how many questions that was, because that was so I'll go back and rewatch this afterwards. But that was a masterclass in the person who asks the questions controls the conversation. You get to guide it. You get to lead the way.
And I'm warming up, James.
Right. I know you're just getting started.
There's 100 more that we could play with here. But the point is that's what practice looks like.
Yes. Right. It's just going over and over again. And it's funny that you went to the one, because I had it highlighted. Your book, by the way, is so great. Exactly what to say. If you're in our, watching this and don't have it, this is required reading. And it's a manual, it's a handbook, right? You can go through and use it. But as you were doing that, I was on the question, the number 4, how would you feel if? Because it seemed like, that's a natural thing. And and what I feel like I got from that was the questions you ask become this kind of natural progression in a conversation that lead you. Look, we cannot manipulate a buyer or seller to buy or sell. None of us are that good, but we can ask the right questions to help them make a good decision for themselves. And that's ultimately what you're doing. And if you've got a person that their personal needs say they need to move, but because you asked really crappy questions or didn't ask any or asked the wrong ones, they don't, you're actually messing with their life here.
The mistake is indecision. Like, how many people did you work with last year that almost potentially possibly made a move? How many people should have made a move in March, April, May of 2020 that didn't pull the trigger in time to get to where they wanted to be, so ended up being priced out of a decision they were hoping to make?
Right.
How many people are going to hold on to a 2.5% interest rate in a house that they hate and then be here 8 years' time saying shoulda, woulda, coulda?
Right.
Because they didn't have the right conversation with somebody to help them find clarity in that decision. Maybe is the greatest expense. So if you combine maybe with your experience, those two things could be costing you more in 2024 than anything else. To help people step out of maybes and indecision, don't rely upon your experience, refine your experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're standing out in a very crowded market of people saying all the same things.
Right. because you put in the time and put in the effort. You've got by the way, you've got the flashcards too with the role play.
Flashcards are a ton of fun.
Oh my gosh, people love these. So you can get them on
these are brand new, right? These were created because people were saying, like, how do we role play with this? And people were making their own versions. And what we've created in these, James, is the ability for people to role play without restrictions. This isn't script practice. This is actually a jam session. And in the word role play is an important 4-letter word, which is the word play. Like, this should be fun. This should be hypothetical. It isn't there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. There are just better ways to be able to do things. And what we've managed to do with the cards is really to look at all the scenarios a real estate agent can find themselves in, right? So whether it's an online lead inquiry, it's a past client, it's an expired, it's a listing appointment, a seller lead, servicing client, circle prospecting, open house, or you're at a closing, like all of the common scenarios that you find yourself at are pulled here. But more importantly than that is we've already documented this number of potential points of friction or objections that could exist within a real estate scenario. So, we want to wait to list our house. Is it waiting for the right time? Is I just want to know how much it's worth. I'm not necessarily looking to be able to put it on the market. We lost out because we should have offered more. So you're a bad agent. Like, all the things that we bump into potentially, they've already been thought about for you. So you can now have jam sessions around this. So if the client is potentially thinking blank, how do you avoid that? And then we documented all of the magic words, but on purpose, without any examples, without any prompts, without any, here's what you should say in this environment. More a case of, this is a tool, you decide how to use it.
Yeah.
And that's what then accelerates the play. It isn't, here's one example that wouldn't work for me. Like, I'm giving you tarragon and you're deciding how to utilize it in a dish. I'm giving you, garlic, and you're deciding whether you want to roast it or use it raw. Like, you can do anything that you want in the scenario. And what I encourage people to do when they're role playing is don't look for the right way and the wrong way. Any way somebody is playing is great. We're looking for refinement and understanding. We're looking to be able to say, okay, that if that was the way that you utilize those words in that scenario, what is the risk? What is the reward? What might they think? Where could it help? Where could it hurt? Nothing is neutral.
It's time on task over time is what I'm hearing from you, is an effort. So I'm sure people ask you this a lot. How much time should I be spending role playing on a regular basis? So what would your blanket answer be for that?
Enough. Right? That would be my answer, is enough. And
I would just say probably more than what you're spending.
Yeah.
Most people watching this are spending zero.
And look at it, right? Is you can be role playing with your teams. You can also be role playing with yourself. Let's just think, right? You're looking to be able to connect with a listing of yours because you optimistically took the listing on a price point that was higher than you really would have hoped, but you were just hopeful that the market would deliver to the expectations of the clients. And here you are 135 days into that listing. You've had approximately 0 offers, and you're nervously dancing around trying to be able to speak to them about making a change. You're nervously looking at your phone every 15 minutes for them to be able to call you to the we need to talk moment. And instead, you could get ahead of it. And then when you're thinking about that awkward conversation, what happens if you just pull out like the role play deck of cards and you start to think, well, how might I open this conversation? And then what might I do to be able to navigate and collect some evidence to help us understand what the next recommendation would be? And you start to build a question tree by role playing with yourself and building a hypothetical scenario out with the cards to say, I think I'm going to be able to map a journey in this customer conversation that gives me more confidence to approach this in the real world. And people think the client interactions are like improv comedy and that you have to be prepared for whatever might happen. But really, it's quite predictable what might happen. So just like improv, you can get yourself ready for any known moment, which means that when that known moment presents itself, you can improvise. But what you're really doing is you're utilizing a pre-planned journey that you created earlier because you considered all the variations of what the choose your own adventure could actually look like. And even in the crazy scenarios that are way to the left or way to the right, you can still take something that was 80% right and do the final 20% of personalization that was required for that scenario.
And then there'll come a point where you go, oh my gosh, I just said that. I'm so proud of myself. My practice is paying off, which is great. All right, as we wrap up, I just want to tell everybody, listen, you've got to get into a space that allows you to grow and get better. And Phil's walking us through how to do it. That's why I'm excited you're coming to our event in April. And this is our event in April is full of amazing elite level speakers. Michelle Poehler is walking through how she's overcome 100
She's
years,
amazing.
100 days.
I'm excited to work with Michelle. She's great.
Dude, her energy is off the chart, and she's opening for us, and what she has accomplished in her world is absolutely fantastic. So she'll be there. Of course, you'll be there to walk us through what to say. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, there's a woman named Linda Clemens. She's a body language expert. The reason I have you guys coming, and you're back-to-back, you'll teach us what to say. She'll teach you how to read people so that we can understand what they're saying when they're not saying. So I love that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, right. The rest of them are just entrepreneurial stories. Gary Brackett won a Super Bowl with the Colts, but he was an undrafted. He was undrafted in the NFL. He played 10 years in the NFL, but was undrafted, and was a walk-on in college. When his football career ended, he started restaurants, lost them all in the pandemic, and has come back from that. So an entrepreneurial story.
Wow.
Jeremy Anderson, that dude's got a story of perseverance. Mina Hawk, of course, from HGTV, who rehabs homes with their mom. She's from Indy. And then Aaliyah Bundles is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker, who was really the first black billionaire on the planet, if there were billionaires back when Madam C.J. Walker was doing hair care products. So it's really quite fascinating. I'm honored that you would come and spend some time with us and those other speakers. What would your final thought be for somebody as they are just thinking about the importance of practice and role play and preparing?
I think one of the safest places to go to play as you elevate your skills is all of the people that you've decided aren't valuable anymore. What do I mean by that? How many people did you come into contact with over the last 12, 18, 24 months that you called old leads, bad leads, failed opportunities, etc.? If you're looking for a place to go jam where your role play could have immediate positive impact, go get busy, starting more meaningful conversations with the people that you've decided weren't worth talking to anymore. And what will happen from those conversations is you start to realize that you can harvest opportunity on something that you were once upon a time calling waste. When you bring those same skills towards the hotter, more meaningful, more relevant and real opportunities that are right in front of you, you're going to treat them with even more value than you have done in the past too. So that would be my final thought is if you're sat there wondering who to speak to today, go role play where it matters, where it can deliver some results, i.e. past clients, old leads, anybody you haven't connected with in a while. And remember that it isn't about counting your conversations. It's about making those conversations count.
Yeah.
And you all hold the power to be able to level up how much all of your existing conversations are counting for you and your family right now.
That's so good. I'm glad you're joining us in April. ElevateIndy.com is where if someone wants to come and hang out with us during that event, you can do it there. And then, Phil, where can they find you?
Instagram's a great place to be able to find me as a person. It's at Phil M. Jones UK. You can also learn more on our content on philmjones.com or exactlywhattosay.com. There is a plethora of information that you can plug into there to help you raise your game as a professional in all areas of your life.
Phil, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you and for all you've done to pour into these communities. We'll see you in April. Everybody watching, thank you so much. Go practice. If you don't go practice now, when are you going to practice, right? Go do it now. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.